we've all worked with someone within our life that was a whiner. And for me, I used to get very annoyed by that. I thought, why even take up this job if you're going to spend half of it whining? You're annoying me. And I think this guy should have just quit. To this day, 2024, my mind is flipping with that. The reason it's flipping is because whiny workers serve a practical utility, especially within the workspace. What whiny workers do, especially for large-scale corporations, is that it keeps upper management in check. There was a period when I was working in this one company, and the guy that was training me was a great resource. He was super helpful, always answering questions, very enthusiastic. I had a great time interacting with him. Overall, the experience was great. Besides one thing. The one thing was that this guy was always trying to stay late at work. And he had this bad habit of asking me right before we're about to clock out, "Hey Armani, you remember the systems I was telling you about? Do you want me to just show you how it works real quick?" It's 4:55 p.m. I'm supposed to leave by 5 p.m. If I say yes to his question, then I'm pretty much guaranteed to stay 1 hour longer. Now I'm annoyed. Thus far, the entire day, I've done a great job. But this idiot wants to ask me this socially unintelligent question in the last minute, which makes him think that I'm a slacker. Because I'm going to say, unfortunately, bro, I can't stay longer than 5 p.m. because I have other stuff to do. Every now and then, staying after 5 p.m. is fine. But I didn't want this to be a habit that this guy got used to. From the very beginning, I told him, look, I can't stay after 5 p.m. And he eventually stopped asking. It still annoyed me though, thinking, don't you have a life outside of work? Why do you always stay in the company for so long? As more time went on by, what happened was this company eventually installed mandatory Saturday overtime. You had to show up. And my trainer, let's just call him Matthew, he was super giddy. He thought, okay, well, more overtime hours for me. But there was a lady named Louise. Louise was the whiny coworker. She would whine to anyone that would listen. And she did not like that the management forced the workers to come in on Saturday. It's one thing if it's voluntary, but forced, that's messed up. So she would whine to anyone that would listen. And eventually, one day, Louise and Matthew, they were in the same room. Matthew was throwing these subtle shots like, well, I actually like to work. I don't mind working overtime. If you don't like it, you could quit. He was throwing these shots. Louise heard it loud and clear. And eventually, she asked Matthew a string of questions that I remember to this day. She asked Matthew, do you have grandkids? Matthew said, no. Do you have kids? Matthew said, no. Do you even have a wife? Matthew said, no. And Louise, she said, I have grandkids, I have kids, and I have a husband. See, Matthew, I can't dedicate my entire life to work like you can. And I give you respect for that. But you got to understand, us other workers, we have lives outside of work too. And that's when my perspective with work and whiny workers was starting to flip. I realized that people like Louise were needed within large-scale corporations, because if there were no Louises, what happens is guys like Matthew, they have no problem just living at work. And upper management loves this. Upper management says, wait a minute, I mean, there's guys like Matthew here. They always want to work. Well, we could get more output out of our teams then. Why don't we do this? Why don't we tell them to bring their pajamas to work? They could just sleep at work, right? They never have to leave. If you have a large-scale corporation and you only have ambitious employees, Eventually, these employees, they're never going to have a life outside of work. So people like Louise, the whiny workers, they keep the management in check. They're saying, no, 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 we still have lives outside of work. Don't get that twisted. Eventually, Louise's whining, it paid off because time went on by and more people thought about it. They said, yeah, I mean, what's up with that? Why are we having to work so much? I mean, Saturday mandatory for how long? And eventually, Louise sparked a grassroots movement, and many of the workers started to bring this up more to upper management. Therefore, after being presented new data, I realized that the bigger the corporation, the more that whiny workers are needed. You don't want a floodgates of whiny workers, but every now and then having a Louise, what it does is it keeps upper management in check, and it's good for all the employees in the long run.